Always trust.
We ask the question, what is needed in the world?
Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad Maleziju je predvodio više od 22 godine na poziciji premijera. Po zanimanju je ljekar, no ovu azijsku zemlju ekonomski preporodio, provodeći mjere na koje se ostatak, posebno zapadnog svijeta, ne bi usudio, a da bi ih kasnije mnogi pokušali kopirati. Zemlju je modernizovao, a regionu promovisao azijske vrijednosti. Formalno je u penziji, no aktivan je i u podmaknoj dobi. Ljetos je napunio 90 godina. Uživa ugled najuticajnijeg lidera u Aziji. Posebno ga poštuju zemlje u razvoju, a on nastavlja da govori bez lake na jeziku.
Dr. Mahathir, very welcome to our program.
Thank you.
Today we meet in Sarajevo, while this parts of Europe seem to be crumbling under the pressure of refugees. This parts of Europe is facing refugee crisis almost with no precedent. So not only Europe is helping other countries, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan. So what do you think the world leaders should immediately do in order to help refugees, primarily Syrians?
Well, Malaysia had some experience of this when Vietnam fell, and there were a lot of Vietnamese refugees, the boat people, so to speak, who came to Malaysia. And we accommodated them, provided them with one island and supply of food, etc., waiting for them to move to third countries. And today there are still a few Vietnamese living in Malaysia, but mostly they are resettled in other countries. So the way to deal with refugees is to accept them and then to try and work out how they can be resettled in other countries, not just the country where they came to, but also even America, Australia. They should be able to take up some of the refugees. Actually, the number of refugees that has gone to Europe is rather small compared to 2 million in Turkey, 1 million in Lebanon, and all that. And in Malaysia, we have at the moment foreigners, 7 million foreigners, some of whom are illegals. And we have to deal with them. We can't just throw them into the sea. But of course, we expect the United Nations also to help.
So do you feel that some countries or some nations are being increasingly insensitive with this refugee crisis?
Unfortunately, I see countries actually barring them, preventing them from passing through. Not that they want to settle, they just want to pass through. They should be allowed to pass through to go to another country of their choice. But eventually, of course, these people should be looked after for the time being. And I believe many of them would like to return to their own country once things are settled down.
Do you see a responsibility from major players in the world, Washington, for example, Moscow, Brussels, other parts? How do you see that?
I think the whole world should be concerned about this. Certainly the big powers, the rich country must play a bigger role because they have the capacity. Of course, they may not want to have too many refugees in their country, but from the figures that we see, there are not too many of them, only about 200,000 of them, whereas in Turkey there are 2 million, and even in Malaysia we have foreigners living in Malaysia, 7 million of them are in Malaysia. So we need to tackle this problem in a very rational way, to redistribute these refugees to different countries, and hopefully when their country becomes more peaceful, they would want to return to their country. They don't want to live in other countries.
What do you think about European Union? It seems that the Union is crumbling under the pressure. It is, can't really deal with any sort of crisis. For example, crisis in Ukraine, a Greek financial crisis, crisis with refugees. Can the Union go on like this?
Well, the Europeans fought two great wars to end all wars. And of course, it's fortunate for them that there were no wars in Europe except for Bosnia and Herzegovina and now in Ukraine. They should be very sensitive, not only about their peace, but the peace of the rest of the world. Unfortunately, they tend to practically promote wars in other countries, not Europe, but in other countries. Ukraine is the exception. What happened to Bosnia was terrible. They allowed the Serbs to commit genocide, ethnic cleansing, and then they rewarded the Serbs with huge territory. And that is, I think, a lack of a sense of justice in Europe. And their handling of their finances also is extremely bad. And they seem to be unable to get out of their financial crisis since 2008 until now. They still haven't been able to solve their problem.
And since 2008, as you've mentioned, we are being told that the world is hit by a financial crisis. What do you think is the real root of it? And have we got it right since then?
I think the system is not actually wrong, but it has been abused. The financial system, the monetary system has been abused. For example, they decided to trade in currency. Currency is not a commodity. It's not something that you trade because the buyers, the end buyers, may be able to use the thing for eating or something like that. This is currency. It goes up and down as the currency traders manipulate the value of the currency. So currency should not be traded at all. It should follow the market, yes, but not traded, because there is deliberate manipulation to lower the value of the currency of one country and increase the value of the currency of another country, and they cause a lot of social problem and business problem because of the lack of stability. So currency trading should be stopped.
So what would you say, who is responsible and who is the prime source of this problem in the world today?
The problem, of course, began with the Bretton Woods. Bretton Woods was a good agreement where the value of the US dollar was fixed at 35 to 1 ounce of gold. But subsequently, they went off the gold standard. And from then onwards, the currency fluctuated from being 35 to 1 ounce. Now it is over $1,000 to 1 ounce. So we really don't know the value of this currency. And because of that, people tend to play with the currency because there is no fixed value. Now we should get away from one currency. There should be perhaps a basket of currencies to determine the value of any currency, or we should get away from making use of the US dollar and create another trading currency.
Can euro be a solution, or sort of a substitute?
I think Europe made the mistake of trying to introduce a common currency, the euro, to countries which have different levels of development. Some are poor, some are rich, and there is almost complete disregard for the poverty of some of these countries, and the value of their currency was very low. When they introduced the euro, everything went up in price, and unfortunately they were fond of lending money to people who are really unable to pay, and that's what happened to Greece.
So what is the future of euro?
I think it's difficult, but the euro should be dismantled. I don't think one currency should be used by all countries, because each one has got its own economic problem, financial problem, and they can be dealt with their own currency.
Clear. Also, austerity measures. Many governments have introduced the measures so far as a way to, solve the crisis or at least get through it. What do you think about this concept of austerity measures?
The measures are inadequate. Any measure that you take will have both good and bad effects. It is important to study fully the consequences of the changes that are introduced to see whether they will really work or not.
There is a sense that almost everything concerning global economy is based on mere speculations. Is it true?
That's true.
So who is doing it and why? And how can we stop it if it is wrong?
Well, if you go back to the share market, for example, the share market was introduced in order to raise capital for business. But today the share market is a casino. People buy and sell shares without any reference to the value of the shares. Whether the company is doing well or not, people buy and push up the price. If they sell, the price goes down. It has nothing to do with the business at all. And that's why we have things like junk bonds, where the value of the shares are practically nil, and yet they were able to make a lot of money selling junk bonds. So I think the world is being manipulated by speculators in the market, and these speculators have got nothing to do with the production of goods and services that are needed by the world.
Where are those speculators?
Well, they are very mysterious. They operate from some tax havens in the Caribbean or somewhere. Normally, we don't know much about them, and yet their business is huge. I am told that in one day, the currency traders traded $4 trillion, which is equivalent to the total production of Germany for 1 year. So, and imagine with these huge sums of money being traded, there is no benefit to other people. You don't need insurance, you don't need transportation, you don't need labor, you don't need supporting industries or anything. And yet this business is huge, and it can adversely affect the economy of the world.
Do you feel it's crucial to prosecute political leaders who lead their nations to war?
Well, if you want to prosecute, it must be by an international court. It must not be by the victors, because the victors are biased. After the last war, for example, they set up the court in Nuremberg, and then they tried the losers. That is not right. Both sides should face the court if they commit any crime during the war.
Do you feel it is going to happen in any time soon?
Well, currently there is these trials of the Serb leaders who were involved in the genocide, but recently the US wants to expel Bosnians who they charge with having committed crimes during the war. But I think there is something not right there, because the Bosnians were actually defending themselves, and if they did commit any atrocities at all, it is because they were defending themselves. If the Serbs had not attacked them, they wouldn't have committed such crimes. But the Serbs deliberately attacked with the intention to wipe out, to do ethnic cleansing, genocide of the Bosnian people. And I think they are in the wrong, and they should be tried.
What about leaders of great powers from Russia, United States, France, United Kingdom, other powers?
Well, when you have a powerful person, it's very difficult to apply the law on him, because obviously he's going to resent it. So far, the law, international law, is applied only to weak people. For example, the president of Sudan has been tried in absentia and found guilty. And if he travels to some countries, he's going to be arrested. But we see a lot more people who have committed greater crimes. For example, the wars which were conducted by the US resulted in the killings of so many innocent people. But of course, the leaders are glorified. They are called heroes. They may have statues erected for them and all that. So international law at the moment is unjust.
Unjust. You often talk about Bosnia Herzegovina. You've been to the country so many times, and your country, Malaysia, have supported Bosnia a lot. It has invested, I would say, billions of dollars or donated in this country. So do you think that Bosnia Herzegovina has successfully taken this opportunity, taken your support, and prospered from it?
I've been coming many times. Even before the war, I was here. I visited Sarajevo when it was still a part of Yugoslavia. And then I came here after the war, where I saw destruction everywhere. All the buildings are broken down. But now I see most of the effects of war, the damage due to war has been rebuilt, and I think it has made progress, but unfortunately I must say that the progress is very slow. We need to accelerate the progress.
Are you some sort of disappointed with what you see in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
I am not fully disappointed. I find that every time I visit Sarajevo, the town becomes more and more beautiful. There are roadside cafes, people drinking coffee on the terraces. It's very colorful, it's very beautiful, and I think it should attract a lot of tourists, but it is not enough.
So what do you think country should do? Now it's taken decades with slow progress, as you've described. So what should be changed, to say immediately?
Well, we need more investment in bigger industries. At one time you were producing weapons here in Bosnia for the Yugoslav Republic, so that can be revived. There are many other areas where you can have a big business, and I think tourism is one of the greatest potential. You have good water, which I think can compete even with avian, and you should be marketing this all over the world. In fact, when I'm going back today, I'm taking along with me some Bosnian water. They are sweet.
You took part in a conference here in Sarajevo, 20 years of peace, a way forward. So do you see this part of Europe as having learned a lesson to embrace cooperation instead of conflicts?
Yeah, I think after 20 years, it's good to review. We have 20 years of peace here. What have we done during that 20 years? What else can be done? What can be done in order to speed up the development of Bosnia Herzegovina? Having a lot of participants from Bosnia itself and from the neighboring countries like Croatia and Slovenia, and also from Malaysia. I think ideas were put up during the conference, which, if implemented, would certainly accelerate the growth of Bosnia.
You led your country for more than 22 years, as I've followed. And during that time, your country experienced remarkable change, became a world player. So do you think your country is still a world player and has that reputation?
Well, we hope it will continue to do something about internationally. But currently, we are having a problem, and we need to solve that problem first. We have a lot of accusations leveled at the Prime Minister. There are lots of scandals, and these things have got to be resolved.
Do you feel they will be resolved quickly, soon, and can you overcome not to harm a business environment?
It's like this international law. If you want to apply international law to powerful people in power, you find it extremely difficult. So it's the same in Malaysia. The man who is being accused is very powerful. He has government machinery under his hand, and it's very difficult for us to take. Even if we make a police report, well, the police may not take action at all. We must ignore. In fact, we have instances where people who make a police report, they themselves were investigated, made bankrupt, and now they have been arrested.
Have you seen the Al Jazeera's documentary about some situation in Malaysia, a murder in Malaysia? And a journalist who made the documentary was banned from entering Malaysia. She was actually deported to Australia. What do you think about that situation?
Well, there are bans against foreign papers, against local papers have been, their license have been withdrawn. People who criticize, they get themselves investigated. The situation is not very good in Malaysia, but abroad, of course, they cannot do anything. So when Al Jazeera showed this picture, I think the whole world would accept it, but in Malaysia, there is still that resistance. They cannot bring themselves to believe that this is happening in Malaysia. And so they say, no, this cannot happen. They are deliberately trying to undermine Malaysia. But a lot of Malaysians would believe, but they have no means of acting.
Even democracy in their hands, can that work for them? I mean, democratic power to elect.
Democracy is not perfect. Sometimes, even in elections, with the use of money, you can actually frustrate the objective of electing a good leader.
And you yourself, you're blessed with a big family, and you adopted 3 Palestinian children, embraced them as your own. Does that reflect your sentiment of the Palestinian issue?
Well, we have always been concerned about what happened to the Palestinians from the very beginning. When the state of Israel was created, we felt that was an injustice. And since then, we have found that the state of Israel has been very oppressive. Recently, for example, anybody throwing stones at soldiers will be shot. I mean, this is excessive retaliation, which cannot be accepted. But we find that the great powers who talk so much about human rights and things like that, we find that they actually approve. They never condemn this horrendous idea, terrible idea of killing people because they throw stones.
So what do you think is the interest of great powers to act in that way?
The great powers, by and large, are very much influenced by their Jewish population. In America, of course, the Jews control the media, the Jews control the banks, the financial system. These are powerful instruments, and the American people, by and large, know very little about what happens outside of America, and certainly very little about what happens to the Palestinians.
So small countries can literally do nothing then?
Well, Al Jazeera would be a good media, but even Al Jazeera has to step very carefully because actions may be taken.
Actions by whom?
By the powerful. We don't live in a democratic world. The world is not democratic. Please forget about democracy. It is still might is right.
So then what should we do?
We should try and do small things that we can do. We try to help. In the case of Malaysia, we try to help the people in Gaza. We send ships there to carry some relief material, building material. Unfortunately, when they were on high seas, international waters, the Israeli Navy illegally forced them to go to Israel, where they took over all the goods that we were carrying for Gaza. And until now, we don't know whether the goods were building materials, etc., were sent to Gaza or not.
Dr. Mahathir, thank you very much for this interview. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Poštovani gledalci, gost Al Jazeere je Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, bivši premijer Malezije. Ova emisija uvijek i na portalu aljazeera.net/Balkans. Hvala na pažnji.